Welcome back and many thanks for staying with us. Now, experts have warned that Kenya could be in the grip of the worst drought in recent history. The government, which has declared the drought a national disaster, estimates that the number of people who are acutely food insecure has risen to 2.7 million, up from 2 million in January. Meanwhile, the drought has sent prices of food staples such as maize and sorghum soaring. The UN's Food and Agriculture Organization is warning that a sharp increase in food prices could lead to a knock-on and widespread hunger effects in Kenya and the region. All right, so again, this is not the first time that the areas that are struck by drought at the moment are experiencing this. We've had cycles of drought over years, over decades really, but now the cycles are becoming shorter. And we've had, these warnings earlier before, but again, people are facing starvation. What is our issue? Generally, lack of preparedness, or what is this?
In a sense, Kenya is not able to commit itself to principles of governance, especially when it comes to the welfare of its general population. And we have seen that even in the health sector. I'm not going to talk about it, but it's my pet subject. And so even when it comes to issues like climate change, because the shorter cycles are an issue of climate change. So even when it comes to issues of climate change, our government is not able to respond in time, whether it's at the national government or even at the county governments. And it's only recently, in fact, in the last 2 days, that county governments have actually agreed to allocate certain funds towards alleviating the situation for many of their constituents, which is sad. Because why does it have to take so long? Why does it have to take months for you to respond to something that you knew would happen?
Right.
And those are disappointments I have.
Okay, Wangari, and of course, as we point our fingers to the government on, lack of preparedness or whatnot, this is also a multi-sectoral kind of a problem that needs a sectoral approach. And of course, the main cause being that, the whole world is experiencing climatic changes. Do you think that Kenya is aligning itself properly to get long-term solutions and best practices, even as we are going through, these climatic changes?
I think Kenya, and we talked about this even in the last topic, this strategic thinking is greatly lacking, and it's been greatly lacking in Kenya over many decades, many years. And I think this is something that we really need to build upon. Things happen systematically, regularly. We have no strategy. It's like a surprise to us every time, which is always really disappointing to me. I mean, the drought has affected, it was 1.25 in September, came 2 million, 60% increase, 2 million in January, and then increased again to 2.7 in 1 month. So that is really dire circumstances. Right? So I mean, I'll even tell them, the ministry, if they're listening, for free. I mean, one, national planning, you need to make sure, I mean, unfortunately, most of the urban areas in the most fertile regions of Kenya. So national planning, land use. Number two, you need to think about the effect, how are people using their resources. Deforestation promotes climate change. Overfishing for example, in Lake Turkana for bad fishing practices. I mean, thinking about the cost of food in some of the rural areas, in some of the large counties, to take maize or sorghum from one place to another, the fuel, the distances, the cost of food is going to be sky high. And then lastly, of course, now the pastoralists, because their herds are decimated. I mean, these pastoralists are very rich. In the fertile region, they have herds of millions of shillings in herds of cattle, but those are decimated in a second. So lack of savings. So I mean, these are the things you need to put in a strategy to address these issues.
Faith, is this purely a political problem also? Because some would say there also needs to be political goodwill. I mean, these areas, from the drought, the perennial drought that they experience, the people are also a bit marginalized, and very underdeveloped. What do you think is the best approach towards a permanent or a sustainable solution?
I think this is a problem that has been with us for, over the years. The government has to take deliberate measures to ensure that we have long-term solutions. I mean, it's very clear that we don't have, goodwill from government, and now we have the county governments, and so it should be a bit easier to even coordinate, issues to do with.
Is it very clear that there's no goodwill from
food? Oh yeah, let me tell you why. Because I know for sure that we have there's a Maputo.
Because also we've seen these ministers going around. One could argue it's
let me give you. There's an interministerial agency or
Mm-hmm.
committee that was formed to just look into issues to do with drought. That is really good, and they even allocated funds. I think 7 billion for the first phase, 11 billion for the second phase. But I'll tell you one thing: the Maputo Declaration, I think of 2013, if I'm not wrong, actually requires that for every government to give 10% of its budget to food security, to food and agriculture. We, in 2015-2016, the government gave only 3%, 2.7 actually.
So that they're not prioritizing it.
Even from the resources alone tells you a lot. That we're not giving in enough resources, and so Clearly, that's why this is happening. All right, then let's move on to our next discussion. And officials of the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union have appeared before a joint sitting of the National Assembly's Health Committee and Social Welfare Committee to make a case for the implementation of the contentious common bargaining agreement. The officials have accused the government of not being serious in resolving the impasse. Let's listen in to what they told the MPs.
In some counties, we have had doctors call for 6 months without salaries, and yet the national government has released money meant for salaries, but yet it is diverted to do other projects in the county. So if money meant for salaries could be protected and given to counties as conditional grants so that it can serve the purpose it is intended for at that particular stage.
Even in a court dispute that we had over the same CBA, the court had noted that the union has been frustrated to an extent that parts of the constitution have been violated. And part of our prayer then is that ending this stalemate means that the committees that are here, that's the Committee of Labor and the Committee of Health, should come out very strongly as representatives of Kenyans to hold accountable the employers of doctors in public sector, which is the government, that they have to demonstrate good faith. The fact that this strike has been going on for the last 80 days means that good faith is lacking.
All right, we see the officials there saying that good faith is lacking, from the government. Others would argue that good faith is lacking from both sides. What's your take on this, Betty?
Okay, and like I said earlier, this is my pet subject. I'll tell you this, that if you have a situation, as Dr. Oroko has described, where salaries have been withheld for 6 months, you cannot possibly expect a professional to be taking care of thousands of people without having had a salary for half the year. That is completely unreasonable. It is completely unconscionable that a government would allow that, whether it's the county government or the national government that made that mistake. Okay, and then beyond that, when this particular strike went into effect on December 5th, by the time they had done that, they had been given ample time to respond, ample time. And 80 days is more than ample time to establish that good faith and the goodwill so that the doctors say, okay, look, we're going to keep on talking, but we're going to go back to work. And that is something that I have not seen personally coming from the government. What I have seen instead is PS Muraguri going off and registering voters instead of turning up for negotiations. I've seen Mailu blaming Muraguri. I've seen Mailu blaming the doctors themselves for not turning up for negotiations, when in fact they're the ones not doing their part. So I've not seen that good faith or that commitment from the government. Having said that, the doctors at this point do have to take some of the blame for the way the situation has,
played out.
How so? In the sense that in as much as I understand their point of view that they cannot end the strike unless certain parameters are met, it has taken longer than they had expected, and they need to find out how can they mitigate for that. They need to figure it out.
Do you think, Wangare, the doctors calling off the strike and then going back to the negotiations would show that they're losing out their cause? Is there a reason for them to continue with the debate? Should they stick it out to the end, in your opinion?
No, I think they were making a point, and I think the point has been made.
Right.
And I think they've come to a point where now they are back on discussions. They're talking, and for better or for worse, I'm not sure how the discussions are going. I was watching earlier the former PS Permanent Secretary Bor was talking with the committee and disowning the agreement and saying, look, I didn't sign this agreement. I was not even a PS. I was not legally in office at the time when I signed it. And there's a lot of kind of cloak and dagger going around this agreement. So I think there is a big challenge. I believe the agreement, and I wasn't quite sure if the team there had read the CBA, because it's not really an agreement, because there's some areas of contention. There are areas where you say, this is the view of the union, this is the view of the ministry, and no consensus saying, actually, this is what we have decided at the end. So even if the CBA was passed as is, what happens to those contentious issues? And even the salary proposals it's just proposals. It's not said this is the agreed.
This is a commitment.
So there's a challenge there. And when I heard former PS Bor saying it was a document in transition, I believe that, because that document is not a final document. It's not an agreement in any form.
Yeah, I want to agree with Wangari. If you look at that CBA, even the issue of salaries, the issue of pay, did not come out very clearly. It was not agreed upon. There were other issues like the medical facilities and so on. But I just want to really pass an appeal to doctors, to just be a bit lenient. They've now communicated, and we have seen that it's very easy.
And that this can happen.
It can actually, 80 days is not a joke. I don't think we have had such a strike
a protracted strike before.
Exactly, and the health sector is a very critical sector. We have seen this in other countries. It can actually, bring a country to a halt. And so it's time for them to sit down with, of course they are doing that, but to be a bit lenient. And,
because it's the public now that's suffering, right?
The public.
Do you think it's time to then let the public off the equation, the suffering of the public?
Yeah, I mean, they should just, we really need a sober discourse. That is what I would say. We need a sober discourse from the government and from the doctors.
All right.
For the sake of the public, at least.
All right. Okay, let's move on now. And Jacqueline Wende, the woman who lost her hands in a brutal panga attack, is back in the headlines. Wende, who is pregnant now, reveals that during the attack she was pregnant by another man. Wende accused her husband of chopping off her hands because she could not conceive. Wende now claims that she cheated to save her marriage. Did we get duped?
Mlisangila hata kama watu hawakuwa na watoto. Si tulienda Nairobi hospital, akaambiwa ni yeye ako na shida. Nikamuuliza ni kwa nini hatukukaa chini tukajadiliana, tujuane nani ako na shida. Hakuwa akinielezea kitu chochote.
Siku ya kukuumiza hivyo ndio mlikuwa mnaongea?
Hapana, miezi 3 iliyopita. Na nikimwambia nikiwa kliniki, hakuwa anaenda.
Kliniki ya nini?
Ya kurudi huko Nairobi hospital.
Right, so I was just thinking about this case today, and it's a bit, of a case, in the sense of we would be discussing on a moral issue, because I believe it's a moral issue. But the question we've posed there: do you think we were duped, Betty?
What were we duped of? I mean, I want to understand where the duping part came in, because you see, this man is violent.
Because she was a victim, all right.
But he's violent. Period.
Yes.
He's violent. Period. For you to cut off somebody's, in fact, that was attempted murder. Okay, he cut off her hands. He tried to kill her. Whether she was cheating or not, that is not allowed. It's just not right. It's just not right. So whether she told us the truth at that time, to make herself seem more of a victim and more sympathetic a character, it is irrelevant to me. It is totally irrelevant. In fact, I'm happy for her.
Was the lie to cover up, or I mean, we cannot debate. Was this, was she abused? Yes, she was. Was she a victim? Yes, she was. I think that is not up for debate.
Yeah,
but the lying bit,
whether she cheated or not, like Betty,
but lying by omission actually
should not be part of this equation, because first we have seen very many women, and Sharon, you've interviewed women who have fertility issues, and she's saying that I had to do this to save my marriage. Probably she was trying out to see if she is the problem, or you know, maybe the husband. It's a very difficult debate to have, but
wasn't the problem.
she wasn't the problem. Now,
Evidently.
evidently she wasn't the problem. I'm super happy for her. Nobody should cut off your hands, your whatever, because you can't have a baby. And yet you can actually have a baby. And that is the issues that women go through.
Okay, maybe the question, Wangari, is that she's, by her own admission, she was cheating. She says that now. Maybe what people would really wonder is, why didn't this confession come at the time when she was giving the entire question? I mean, I don't know if we even have any right to ask, but, you know, I mean, she's in the public, you know, eye right now.
Well, I don't, well, who knows whether she knew she was pregnant or not. I'm not quite sure what the timelines are there. Right. But I want to echo what Faith said here. And I think the larger issue is this, you have to have a child to have a family. And my contention is, you don't have to have a child to have a family. Once you get married, that is already a family. You and your spouse are a family. And I think the pressure that people put on you, you say pressure to have children. If you're infertile, it's really expensive to get treatment. Communication, you're unable to communicate to your family if you're infertile. It's a big taboo topic. It really brings a lot of complications. Yes, that guy was violent, for sure. I mean, to react like that, that's crazy. But by the same token, you can have families in different ways. You can adopt, you can foster, there's fertility treatments. There's many ways you can have a family if you want to have a child.
But she wanted to, like, I was reading that story in one of the papers today, and she's saying she really wanted to have a child, so it's something she wanted. Oh, well, we're happy for her, aren't we? Let's move on. And today, we end with sad news of the passing of Wangoi Mbatia, a panelist, friend to the show, and determined rights activist. She passed away after a 3-year battle with cancer, leaving behind her husband, Polycarp, and daughter, Celine. Her colleague, Evans Ageto, put it best when he described her as, and I quote, a strong character, a mobilizer, organizer, and disorganizer who never minced her words on any subject. That's exactly how we will remember her. Let's have a look at some of our favorite memories with her right here on News Sources.
He said instantly that he's going to reverse all executive decrees Obama had, and those ones are holding some of the most serious successes Obama has had. He's had a difficult time with Congress and the Senate, and he's had to have executive decrees. And the first thing he says he's going to do is going to reverse that. I think it must be painful for a person who was who started out with a country that was so hopeful and has unfortunately seen his term end with I think an America that was more divided, is more divided now than it was when he started. That must be painful. My concern was not about Kingi in that entire episode, was about the multitude of CORD leaders that escorted him to EACC. Because I want to understand what exactly their stance is on corruption. Is it okay if it is being done by an ODM person and not okay if it's a jubilant? Or is it just wrong? Some of those commissioners who haven't been named in any scandal are having to live under these circumstances, because you see, the point is that they will live, whether we like it or not, we are sort of giving them a disgraceful, dishonorable exit. And some of them do not really deserve it, and some of them are fairly young.
All right, and it's really sad news. I think I personally am still coming to terms with this. She was a good friend, a great friend to the show, very brilliant woman, and I think each of you actually had a chance to interact with her on the show, and maybe just your brief memories of her.
Yeah.
Very briefly, because
Yeah, she was an amazing woman. She spoke her mind. She didn't mince her words. And, you know, she fought a good fight. And, I mean, for me, it was really a great opportunity to have interacted with her.
Right. And, of course, very strong also, because she'd come to the show severally, and she was still actually battling this at the time.
I didn't know her very well, but we did have the sessions together, some of the shows together. And after the shows, we would meet in the hallways, and we'd sit there and have discussions and arguments about different positions. And I really saw she was a bright spark in this world. And people like Wangoi, I mean, who know their place in this world and vigorously defend it, are very essential in this world where that can be very spineless.
Right.
And I have to say, cancer is a cruel thief. Cancer took my father in 2014, and so it can be very. I mean, it cuts where it cuts, and you can't control it many times. But there is treatment, and for people out there with cancer, at least make sure, even if you don't, early detection. Make sure you go in for your regular checkups. Make sure you detect it early, because if it's detected early, then you can fight it.
Right, Betty.
For me, the most memorable thing about Wangoi, and this is beyond news sources, is that Wangoi ran this NGO called Kengonet, and some of the work should do is offer pro bono services to women who have been detained at Pumwani Maternity Hospital over non-payment of maternity fees. And I think that she changed a lot of women's lives, and that's one of the most powerful things I can think of at the moment. I do agree with Wangari that cancer is a terrible, terrible thing, and our healthcare system needs to just be able to deal with it. For most Kenyans, it's not possible to do more, to do enough to detect it.
Okay, we definitely will miss her at the show. Rest in peace, Wangoi. She gets laid to rest this Friday at her home in Ongata, Rongai. Right, before we wrap up, let's just remind you of our Twitter poll. We asked you tonight, do you think the delay in naming NASA's flag bearer is weakening the coalition? 40% of you say yes, it is weakening the coalition. 60% of you do not agree that it is. Many thanks for engaging with us. Let's keep the conversation going on our social media. Many thanks for joining us tonight and for being with us tonight. That's where we wrap up this edition of the show. Thank you, ladies, for joining me tonight. Do enjoy the rest of your viewing. My name is Sharon Momanyi. Have a good night.